Hi, welcome to Lasers, Dragons, and Keyboards. I'm Aaron DeMott.
I'm Liberty Hart. And today we have with us our very first guest from 2016, Lindsay Franklin. Lindsay A. Franklin is the Carroll Award winning author of The Story Peddler and ECPA bestselling author of Adored. By day, she wrangles chaos as managing editor of Enclave Publishing. By night, she spins whimsical tales fueled by hot drinks, rainy days, and the thunderous purrs of her spoiled cats. We know nothing about that problem, do we?
Nope.
Lindsay lives among the misty evergreens of the Pacific Northwest with her family. She is currently on a quest to discover the sparkliest nail polish on the planet. Lindsay is a sought after speaker and teacher who inspires writers at every stage of their journeys and delights in geeking out with readers over all things bookish. Her highly anticipated second fantasy series launches with its first book in February of 2025, inviting readers into another world of magic, mystery, and unforgettable characters. Lindsay, welcome back to Lasers, Dragons, and Keyboards. It is such a delight to have you on again. I can't believe it's been 9 years
9
since we've
years.
had you on.
I know, right?
9 years.
Wow.
Oh, I'm
All
so
right, let's
excited to
let's
be
jump
here.
right into the serious discussion topics. What is the sparkliest nail polish on the planet?
Yes.
I'm still searching. I got one for Christmas that is such a sparkly gold, and I had to film some content for social media, and it was like boom on the camera. I was like, that might be it. I maybe found it. Might be my one, but we're in progress right now. So today we're gonna do this later, which is like this periwinkle magnetized kind of like crazy thing. So
Okay.
after I'm finished talking to you lovely people, that's what I'm doing.
Well, there you go.
I don't usually do sparkles, and I work at a gun store now, so I don't usually do my nails. But I have a couple that I like that have a little hint of a sparkle, but they're James Bond themed.
Nice.
And for everybody who's
Love
not
it.
watching this live or on YouTube, she held up a bottle. It's metallic blue dye from Final Fantasy 14. It's kind of the color that it is.
Perfect.
It kind of looks
Awesome.
that
Perfect.
way, doesn't it? Yeah. So have to remember this is mostly a podcast, not a video.
That's right.
So
It's a
Oh,
little bit of
yeah,
both.
that's
I
right.
mean,
it's a little bit of both.
And
A
if
So
you
little
are
both.
listening on Libsyn, go over to our YouTube channel. You can see her holding up there.
yep,
That's
yep.
right.
So,
That's right. That's
So,
exclusive content for those who are watching the video feed.
exactly.
exactly.
So
Um, so, um, we kind of already went over it, but we have to go
Kitty!
with the classic. Yeah, we have to go with the classic. What is your name? What is your quest? And what is your favorite color? Also, that's premium content right there. The cat. Ratings
My
just went up.
cat. There's always one or more cats in my room whenever I'm doing anything. Ooh, her eyes are glowing. That's fun. That's Willow. That's my one girl cat. I don't know what her quest is, but probably treats. That's her main quest.
And to knock
So my
everything
name
off
is,
the table. Sorry.
Yeah.
yes, that too. No, that's my other cat, Oliver. He likes to do that. My name is Lindsay. Quest is the Holy Grail. No, not that. My quest, aside from my side quest of finding the sparkliest nail polish on the planet, is to write stories of wonder that make my readers feel seen. And my favorite color is blue. No, it's actually black.
well, I mean, that's
The
appropriate. You're wearing a black shirt today, so
One of
Yes.
these
I am.
days, when somebody's gonna makes that half answer like that, I'm gonna kick them off the Discord channel just for the fun of it.
It would
Ah!
be really funny if you could do like a video, thing. More exclusive content for your YouTube people is, have
Hmm.
your guests just fly off the screen. Yeah. People people who have not seen Monty Python are probably like, why do people keep saying that? What is that? I don't get it.
I would imagine most of our listeners have, but
I would think so too. Yeah.
One of these days, we're going to have a guest named Tim somehow, and that'll be great.
The enchanter.
Yes.
oh.
Um,
So Lindsay, why don't you tell us about your latest project, which I've apparently my ADHD brain has already decided to forget the name of your book.
started with an E.
But
Honestly, it's such a long title too. I submitted this book with, a couple different title options, and this one was my favorite, but I 100% thought Steve Lobby was going to veto my title because it's so long. And I just thought, does that even fit on a book spine? And we can ask Kirk about that later. He apparently, it was a little bit of a struggle to get it on there, but yeah. So the title of the book, my apologies, is The Unraveling of Emlyn Dulane. And hold on. I have to pull up my written materials because if I just try to give you the log line verbally, my ADHD will spin us off on this very rambly sort of quest.
I know
And
that
so,
feeling.
right? I just like,
Yes.
yeah. So we're going to try to keep it short and succinct. So, desperate to find proof that her missing sister is still alive, 17-year-old Emlyn Dulane chases a dragon through a portal and is thrust into Rivenly, home to the magical library of her childhood imaginings. Forced to join a team that repairs rogue classics, Emlyn uncovers a sinister plot that threatens to tear apart both the world of fiction and reality itself.
Well, that sounds good just from the description.
So
Yay!
good. I lost sleep reading this book.
Yeah, you were a beta reader, right?
Yes.
Very nice.
So, Aaron, ask a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're professionals.
This is what editing is for, guys.
Is there a...
We stopped doing that in like 2015.
Yeah, screw it, we'll do it live. So yeah, if you say anything like that, yeah, it's gonna go out there. We don't care anymore.
It's fine.
It's more fun. It's more fun this way. Yeah, we'll go with that.
It's more
good to
liberty
know.
than a really bad experience with an editing job on one of these, and I'm like, screw it.
Oh no, that is rough. I get this now because I am doing video content on social media. And so, editing photos is very different. I've been doing that for years, but in 2022 or something like that, I was a late adopter. I was like, I really need to start figuring out how to do video. And so editing those, you shoot and that takes 20 minutes to get all the shots you need. And then the editing can just take forever. So I can
Right.
understand having a bad experience in editing.
Yeah. Especially just audio. It's one thing if you've got clear content and clear recordings, but if you have any sort of issues with quality, it's a headache. So, but we'll let Aaron go because apparently I have a cat screaming to get out of my room. So.
Sure. Anyway, back to the actual questions. Is there a particular character that you resonate with from this story, and if so, who and why?
So Emlyn is actually a character who has been with me for nearly 20 years at this point. When I first started writing, before I was in the publishing industry at all, so this would have been like 2006, I started writing a draft of my first little fantasy novel, at least the first one I wrote as an adult. I wrote things as a kid, but I wrote this story and it's centered around this character, Emlyn. And as green novelists so often do, she was just like a direct reflection of me. She was so me that, and I think we tend to do that as our first story. We write a character who's completely us. So I did get agented off of that story somehow. I still kind of laugh with my agent, like, why did you sign me based on that book? Because it was so but she saw potential. I guess it had to have been potential rather than actual skills at that point. But she signed me on that book. We actually did pitch that project even. I rewrote it though, a few times. So we pitched that project and got rejected everywhere, wrote a different book, got rejected everywhere, and then wrote The Story Peddler. So that was kind of the journey. After the Weaver trilogy was done, I was like, I really want to revisit Emlyn and write a new story for her. and give her a completely different plot, maybe pull some of the characters from that story
Mhm.
from nearly 20 years ago. And so that's what I did with this story. So it's kind of weird that it's my second novel and this is the protagonist I've written who probably most represents me, but that's how that came to be. So I very much relate to her. If you do have ADHD and you read this story, you may recognize some of those sort of thought patterns. I've put some of that in there, what my internal monologue sounds like. So if you've read this book or if you do read this and you kind of vibe with that, that's very much what it sounds like in my head.
Uh-oh.
Very cool. Yeah,
Excellent.
I can definitely relate to revisiting characters. I have a character that I plunked into the middle of my Darby Shaw books, um, and eventually I'm hoping to spin it off. But this was a character I actually started writing as a teenager. Um,
Hmm.
and so she's got a little more street smarts now, but she's like a side character and everything. But I'm hoping to eventually do a spin off with that character. So I understand.
Yeah.
I love that. And there's actually a line in Unraveling that says, I'll probably slightly misquote myself here, but it says, when you love story people, they feel real, or
Mhm.
something like that.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
when you love a story person, they feel real. Because this story it's very like it's meta storytelling, where it's stories
Mhm.
about stories about stories, it's that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So they talk about characters and tropes and such
Mhm.
throughout the course of the story. But I think that that's so true that we fall in love with characters as readers. That happens
Mhm.
for readers, but it also massively happens for us as the creators of those
Mhm.
characters,
Oh
where
yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
just
yeah.
love these. Yeah, right. We love these story people that we
Mhm.
have created. And so
Mhm.
when you have one who just has really embedded herself or himself into your heart,
Mhm.
like we don't always want to let them go, nor should we. I,
Mhm.
I feel like it's good to write them into something, as our
Mhm.
skills progress. It doesn't mean we
Yeah.
revisit those real early stories that we wrote necessarily. We want to keep growing, but
Mhm.
yeah, pluck them out of those older stories, put them into your
Yep.
newer stuff. I'm a big fan of that.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes even if you can take one of those old stories, you know what? This actually has some good bones. If I just strip all the stuff away, keep these
Yep.
central ideas, and then you can you know how to fix that broken old story sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
I think the
Uh,
problem is now, one of the characters I have fallen in love with is one of our characters in our one of our D&D games, and it's like she's a Klingon in the Star Wars universe. I really don't think I can pull her into anything else because of, intellectual property
See,
Yes,
what
you're
you do
right.
there is you just write some fan fiction, toss it up on Wattpad, and have fun with it.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah,
there you
I guess I
go.
could do that.
Those trademarks are tricky.
I know,
They
I
are.
know, I know. So,
And if anybody else from the Star Wars or Star Trek universe is listening, I have always wanted to write a book from one of those universes. If
Yeah.
anybody's
same,
But it's out
same.
there.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Could be a sponsor. Come on. Reach out.
Taking applications, guys.
oh
Let's
yeah,
go.
totally.
So, you had mentioned, like actually mentioning tropes by name in Unraveling, which I absolutely loved, where it was like, oh, I don't want to fall into XYZ trope, and then there's you know this person that's that trope. Like, how what was your process to get there, where it's like you did so well with the meta, on meta there, like, where did that come from?
So, one of the really early inspirations for this story was the idea of a writer falling into their own novel, basically. And so that's kind of where that came from, is thinking, okay, if you're a writer, we're all very well versed in the tropes of our genre, and being in the middle of, I was probably launching Story Hunter when I was really thinking about all of this. And so kind of being in the midst of readers who were discussing my work and all of that, I was just thinking about that a lot, how readers respond to certain tropes and all of that. And I just thought, how funny would that be to, as someone who's very genre aware, either as a writer or a reader, to fall into what you clearly recognize as a piece of YA fiction, as
Mm,
someone who reads
yeah.
that type of story, or clearly would recognize as a piece of sci-fi or whatever. So that's kind of where it came from. And I used that vehicle to probably like, my main character is adamant that she is not going to get involved in a love triangle. And that was a little bit of a nod to some of the criticism that I got for the Weaver trilogy, where I accidentally wrote a love triangle into that.
Yep.
Where, you know,
Accidentally.
accidentally. So that was one of the weirdest things when the Story Peddler went out to my street team. So there was probably, I can't remember how big my team was. I think like 40 people, something like that. And everybody
Mm,
got their early copy. And like half of my group came into our street team Facebook group. Those were the days, right? Um,
mhm.
Came in and said, "Oh, Team Brack." And I went, "What?" Like
Yep.
I was so floored by that, because I thought, no, he's not really like a viable love interest, guys. He's like this, because so to me, that's a love triangle where there's two kind of equally viable options. And so readers are choosing teams and they're trying to decide who's she
Yeah.
going to pick. And I just didn't feel like that was the dynamic I was setting up. But readers very much interpreted it that way. And I get why they would, for sure. Once people started saying love triangle, I was like, oh, yeah, I see that.
Oh
That just
no.
wasn't my
Yeah.
intent.
Uh-huh, sure, sure.
So I made reference to that in Unraveling, where Emlyn is like, not today. This is not happening.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, do you have a
No, good.
favorite scene from the series or from the book?
Oh, wow. That's tough because, oh my goodness. It's tough because there are a lot of visuals with this story. And I probably, Josh is nodding, yes. And I probably have the movie of any story I'm writing. I've got like the movie of it running in my head while I'm writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are certain shots like that, so to speak, where I would just love to see it visually represented someday. But which is a little different, of course, as we know, than a scene necessarily. So there are
Mhm.
some scenes I love in the story where people are talking about certain things, where it's dialogue. But as far as visuals go, the idea of stepping into the library in Rivenly is a favorite of mine, because I said my quest is to try to like spark wonder in my stories.
Yep.
And I feel like that's such a moment of wonder, to kind of open big, heavy double doors, basically in like a castle, and to have shelves upon shelves upon shelves of stories, but they're not books, they're spheres. And the little story world is contained in a glass sphere where you can
Oh,
actually
neat.
see it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And to just kind of have those like levitating on the shelves with, you can see Wonderland over here and Peter Pan's flying through a sphere over there. And so the
Yep.
just the visual of that is probably one of my favorites, because I want to just go to that place and probably stay there forever.
Yeah. You know, as I was beta reading, every shot with, you know, zooming in on the library, it's like, okay, I want to make this my home. Yeah, this is my new home. Just give me a mini fridge and a recliner, and I'm good.
I live here now. It's fine. I
Yes,
live here. Forward my
exactly.
mail. We're good. Yep.
Aaron?
Oh, let's see. What haven't we talked about yet? Oh, here's a good one. What's your favorite go-to snack while writing?
Oh my goodness. So I try not to snack when I'm writing. And the reason for that is because I will get, like smudges all over my papers. I will get crumbs in my keyboard.
I've
And it
ruined
also
4
slows me
keyboards
down.
already.
It slows me down, which I don't like, because ADHD brain likes to gamify everything. Mine does anyway.
Mhm.
Um, where I'm always sort of like timing myself. This is where I get my dopamine hit from like a task that feels overwhelming or I don't really want to start, which writing always feels that way to me. I love to write, and yet it's also like, wow, I have to write 100,000 words, and that just feels very overwhelming. So my brain tries to run away from that. So one of the ways that I encourage myself to keep going is I time myself. I count how many words I get with each sprint. I really have to do that kind of the whole way through because that keeps me motivated. So when I'm snacking, that slows me down and it messes with my metrics, you guys. I can't do that. So I always have drinks though. So I'll have like coffee, tea, water, sparkling water, kombucha, you name it. I've probably, got a glass of it sitting on my desk
I
while
was
I'm
going to
writing.
ask coffee or tea, but apparently the answer is yes.
Yes, all of the above. Yes.
Yeah.
We've got coffee right now, so.
Yeah.
Coffee is my go-to right now. So it's the time of year where I drink more tea, but yeah.
Mhm.
I don't
It's
have
a
any
good
tea
time
at
to
the
do that.
moment. This is a
Oh
problem.
no, sad.
Well,
Empty
after
mugs are so sad.
after
I'll
you're
take
done,
my flavored water.
after we're done, you can go get some more tea, Erin.
Yes.
I will. I'm going over to my niece's house, and we're having tea tasting tonight later, so that'll be a lot of
Oh,
fun.
Oh,
That's
cool.
Lots of tea.
fun.
that does
That's
sound fun.
awesome.
So, one of the questions that we came up with, in the 9 years since you've been on, um, that I think would be fun. What's one of the more difficult things about writing characters from the opposite sex,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to those tropey like romance things and whatnot?
That's a really great question. I think it's always difficult as a woman to make sure that my male characters don't, well, obviously, that they don't sound like women, because I do think that there's quite a fundamental difference most of the time in the way that we think. And by that, I want to be really clear. By that, I do not mean, oh, women are so emotional and whatever. Like, I'm talking a little deeper than that. I'm talking about all the cultural things and societal things that sort of shape the way men and women behave. And I add that caveat because I am a woman who is, if you're into Myers Briggs, my type is INTJ. And so I don't always fit with the way women think, supposedly, kind of on a real surface level. And yet underneath that, I'm very deeply female. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's not just kind of
Hmm.
those stereotypical things
Yeah,
that we think of
yeah.
when it comes to men and women.
I
Relate?
tend to test as an INTJ, even though I think I'm more of an ISTP. But I
Mhm.
definitely, I definitely understand where you're coming from on that.
You get that, right? Where
Mhm.
you're like, you're like, yes, I'm here and like at this women's ministry event or something that's lovely. I love
I,
hanging out with
I,
women,
I
but
don't go to women's ministry events anymore because
not anymore, huh?
they don't speak to me usually. It's like I don't know why I'm here most of the
And
Right, and
and
it's
Aaron's like just smiling and nodding.
time.
Yep, pretty much. Yep.
and it's lovely. I love spending time with other women. I have close girlfriends. Like it's not at all to say anything negative about women. It's just, yeah, if you've got that personality type that is kind of in the 25% versus the 75%, it can
Mhm.
feel a little isolating at times. But
Oh yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
to actually try to answer the question. I think that being surrounded by men in my family, because I have two sons who are now adults, and my husband and I have been married for, it'll be 25 years this summer. Um, so I
Ooh.
think that, yay, uh, yes, we were 5 years old when we got married. Okay. I'm just going to go with that.
Well, shoot,
um,
you look at just
so
about
I
anybody's wedding photo from way back then. Like, what were you like 14 when you got married?
Yeah, that was kind of me during my first marriage. Josh and me, not so much.
Nope.
well,
Since we've only
it's
been
like
married for 2 years.
Yeah, it's Dave and I were very young when we got married. I like turned 18 and then what, 2 months later we got married or something, and he had just turned 20. So we were quite young, but yeah, even so, even when you start quite young, 25 years is like a long time. We're definitely we're there in the 40s. We are officially middle-aged at this time.
Don't
So,
remind me.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Don't remind me either.
Guys, the last time I was on this podcast, we were not middle-aged, and now we are. What
I
happened?
know.
Oh my
Now you're just
No.
depressing me.
Yeah, I was telling the nurse at my doctor's office yesterday when we were talking about sending me to an orthopedist that I do not think I am 40x years old. I'm not going to say the actual number. And she's like, I'm a year older than you. And trust me, I don't feel that way either. And I'm like, in my head, I'm still 25 and can do all this.
right.
Yeah,
What's
yeah. When
going
you're at Realm
on?
Makers playing Nerf Wars with everybody else, it's like, oh, I still feel 25 halfway through the Nerf War with the other actual 25-year-olds. No, no, I'm not. I'm
No,
old.
no.
Nope.
Man, the ship, it has sailed, you guys. Oh, yeah,
No.
no, come back, ship.
Yep.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So being surrounded by men, I'm so sorry. I will bunny trail,
No. No.
But we do that on this podcast, right?
Yes,
That's acceptable
exactly.
here. Okay,
Bunny,
I feel at
bunny trails
home.
are more than allowed.
Yes.
We just need to take
Uh,
that audio excerpt to summarize this podcast, Lindsay. I'm surrounded by men. Like, wait, what?
Readable
So,
tweets, right?
um, Liberty.
Yeah. Um, so what was the hardest scene for you to write in The Unraveling of Emmeline Dulaine?
Yes.
Hey, you got the whole thing. I'm so proud. It's such a long one. I'm sorry. I feel awful. People with their little captions on Instagram and TikTok and everything. It's this huge title. I'm sorry.
I've already typed it into our show notes for the day, so I can
Good,
just look
good.
over here on my other screen.
Perfect. The good thing about that title, though, is if you search in like kind of any piece of it, if you just get any like 2 or 3 words from it into like Amazon or any search bar, the correct stuff comes up. So you don't actually have to remember the whole thing, which is good. But
Hmm.
um, okay, wait, what was the question? Oh, the hardest scene to write?
Yes.
Right. Um, oh, wow. Okay, let me think here. So, how can I talk about things without spoilers? Okay, I'll give you an example of something that was tough because there were parts of this that I was reworking from 20 years ago. Um, so another character I carried forward from that very early version was Emlyn's love interest, and it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship.
Hmm.
Mostly love, a dash of hate, but that dynamic I really had to rethink from where it was at 18 years ago or whenever. It would have been more like 15, I guess, when I was first drafting this. Because there was a dynamic between them in that kind of enemies to lovers trope where
Hmm.
she in her internal monologue has that push and pull of like, she really likes him but she's trying not to, and for various reasons. And so the reader knows, reading my old version, the reader knows that she is into him and she does like him, but what she verbally expressed in those old versions was, get away from me, like don't talk to me, like, so she verbally expressed a lot of no that he didn't listen to. And he was correctly sensing that she really did like him, but when I looked at that dynamic 15 years later, I was like, I don't think I'm going to put that in my YA book. I don't like that at all. This
Yeah, yeah.
idea that
Yeah.
she's expressing that she wants him to go away and he won't take no for an answer. I was like, no, he's going to come across as something I really don't mean him to be. And so that was difficult to rework because I have known these characters and their relationship for so many years that trying to reimagine what their banter looks like and trying to reimagine what does she say verbally to him that makes him know that she is actually into him, and also how can I make it so that he, even though he's really into her, he's going to respect her wishes, her expressed wishes and stuff. So that was very tricky to try to handle
I bet,
that
yeah.
and to revamp it for something that felt a lot more relevant and appropriate for the year 2025 versus 2006 when I was first writing that.
Well, kind of uh, like going off of our previous question too, I think you did a great job of that. From the male point of view and the um, respecting Emmeline, um, while still being like right.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's so full of it, right? She's so full of it.
Yes.
She's like, no, I hate you. But she's like completely weak in the knees and just, yeah.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna have to
Darn
pick up this
wishy-washy
book.
females, I mean.
I've got your other books on the shelf, but I read so much by audiobook. Is there an audiobook coming?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The audiobook listing went live yesterday, and I
Oh,
can't
wow.
talk about it yet because I'm going to share it later. There wasn't a sample yet for people to listen to, so I didn't want to announce super
Okay.
widely yet. But yes, it is recorded, and my narrator is so fun. I love her. So yes, I'm very excited because I've been listening to a lot more audio over the last 2 to 3 years or so.
Right.
So it's an
Well,
important format, I feel like.
It's how I read most of my books, and we've got a lot of people who come on the show and they don't have an audiobook, and I tell them, I'm like, I would love to read your book. I don't have time to sit down and read. I read when I'm driving. I read
Yep.
when I'm doing chores around the house. I read when I'm out mowing the lawn in the summer.
Yep.
I need an audiobook. So
Yeah, absolutely. That is my happy place in the spring and the summer. My favorite thing to do is to put my earbuds in, put a book on, and go work in my garden. So that is my happy place, listening to a story while I'm in my plants. That is just like perfect. Favorite thing to do during the summertime.
And I
Yeah.
just pre-ordered it, so when it goes live,
Yay!
it's going to be in my Audible account.
Oh, I'm so excited. I hope you enjoy. I love my narrator so much for this book. I actually got to listen to a few samples and pick somebody this time. And I love my narrator for the Weaver trilogy too. She had a very different task, I feel like, because I had characters of so many different ages and men, women. I had male point of view characters in that story. So she had a monumental task in trying to do all of the voices for all of those characters. It was a lot, and she did an incredible job. But this story is really different because this book anyway is all told from Emmeline's perspective, and so I wanted someone whose voice really sounded YA, like like a teen girl. And so that was really exciting to get to pick, especially now as an audiobook listener myself, because that's kind of new for me. I was so excited. And they do such a great job at Oasis in producing the audio that
Yeah,
Which
so
is great.
your narrator is Jennifer Jill Araya?
yes.
Araya? I'm not really sure how to say her last
Definitely
name.
one of those.
Definitely one of those, not
Yeah.
sure which either.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it now, so.
Yay. Oh, I'm so excited.
Pre-ordered. You have 2 more, or another pre-order.
We have the same
Yay.
account.
There's
Why
another
are you
cat.
pre-ordering?
Oh, that's right. Too late.
We're not ADHD at all here. No.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway,
Things have definitely changed since you were on the show last.
200% more cats.
Changed
yes,
and
there
yet
is.
stayed the same.
Yes.
That's
We have 2
Waffles.
oh, cat 1, cat 2.
Yep, these are my
Our-
twins.
Yeah. Our cat is over in my recliner here.
Yeah, since she got booted out of my room.
Yeah, my cats are all out of the office that way.
Oh, we're all cat people.
I don't mind having them in the office, but sometimes they get somewhat aggressive and or knock things over or have territory wars. And it's like, nope, not in here. Go that way.
Yep.
Yep. these litter mates here, they're, brother and sister, and they will curl up together really sweet sometimes. And then all of a sudden, invariably, when I'm on a Zoom call or something, it's like, he just gets super aggressive for whatever reason, and he starts biting her neck. It's like, leave her alone. Let the woman
Yep, yep,
live.
yep.
Like, you're sleeping so well. Just a few minutes ago, I think he's not, he doesn't remember sometimes that that's his sister, and he probably shouldn't do that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder sometimes. Yes.
Yeah. So, Lindsay, what types of questions do you ask yourself when you're planning a new book?
Oh, why are we doing this again? What is wrong with you?
Oh, I don't know what
Well
that's like
played.
at all.
I'm I'm kidding, but see, you guys understand because you're writers. For
Yes.
all the readers listening right now, I love what I do. So please don't take my little snark as disparaging the whole process, because I love it. And if I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to tell stories for a
Mm-hmm.
living. Like, who gets to do that? That's amazing. So I'm not trying to complain, but it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
to sit down and do this. So I'm always asking myself, what is this story trying to say? And that's a really important question for me because of a huge mistake that I made early in my career, where when I was writing the very first draft of The Story Peddler, and as I mentioned earlier, that was like the third series or book that my agent and I were trying to pitch. And I loved the concept of it, the seed idea of it, I thought was really good. And I told her, based on the feedback we had gotten for the first two books, I said, to my agent, I feel like this is the idea. This is the breakout idea. Like, it's going to be the one that publishers will say it's different enough. Because that was the feedback we got on my very first iteration of Emlyn, where they said, this is good. We like this, but it feels like every other fantasy that we've already read. So why would we put this out, especially for a debut author? They're not going to do that, because why would any readers buy something that felt too familiar to them? So I told my agent, The Story Peddler is it. That's going to be the one, because it's different enough, and it'll be interesting enough to a publisher. So I wrote that book having spent 4 years in the industry at that point, and I had very much in my own mind branded myself as a Christian fantasy novelist. That I was like, that's who I am. My first series was really overt about my faith, and so I had super branded myself in my own mind. So I wrote The Story Peddler with the concept that we know of the art strands and all of that, but there was a Christ allegory kind of in it, and I had shoved that into that story because I thought, I am a Christian fantasy novelist, and this is what needs to be in all of my stories, especially my debut, because if I don't have Jesus in my story, then people are not going to know what my brand is, you guys. So I wrote a whole draft of that, gave it to my agent, who, remember, signed me when I was so green. She really had no
And then
business signing
Tolkien
me.
came back from the dead and beat you over the head for writing an allegory.
Right? Right? And so almost that happened. It felt like that because my agent, who had been so supportive of everything I'd ever written, right? She loved it. Even when I go back and go, oh, what was I writing? She loved it. And she'd always been my biggest fan. She read that first draft and she told me the point in the story at which she closed the file, and it was the context shifting midpoint of my story, where that's supposed to be like this big, exciting moment that spurs the reader into the second half. And she was like, didn't feel the need to read any further at that point in the story. And I was like, wow, I've made a very big mistake somewhere in here.
Wow.
And it was because I was trying to make that story Christian, in big air quotes. Because I thought that's what I was supposed to write. So I was upset for 2 days. I probably cried for 2 days. And then it was like, okay, I got to fix this now. How am I going to fix it? So I had to really ask myself in that moment, what does this story actually want to be about? Because clearly it doesn't want to be about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's not the point of this story, because not every story has to be about that, right? And so I realized that story really wanted to be about art and it wanted to be about creativity. And that's still, to me, a very Christian message because I feel like when we create art, we're reflecting our creator. And so that's there,
Absolutely.
that's still all woven in there. My faith is very much in that series in a number of different ways, but that is what that story wanted to be about. It wanted to be about creativity and the beauty of that and the power of that. So now when I'm writing stories, I ask myself that before I write a whole draft and send it to my agent, and have her tell me, "Oh, Lindsay, I'm so sorry. I hate this." She did not say that. My agent is so kind, but it was her very kind version of saying that. She just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So, um, that's a super important question for me. And
Oh yeah.
trying to trying to think if there's anything else. Everything else is probably very story specific. Having to
Mhm.
ask myself, I think having logical world building is so important. So I ask myself a lot of questions about the mechanics of the world, even when not all of that makes it on to the page. I need to
Mhm.
know that as the story creator so that anytime I'm slipping in any details, they feel like, yes, that's plausible. And it
Mhm.
is because I've thought about the big picture and how it all
Mhm.
works together,
Yep.
um,
I
which is
think
very complex,
I
this
think
story.
any fantasy or science fiction author has to think through all of the world building, even if, like you said, if it doesn't make it on the page. So, like, I don't necessarily need to know how the hover cars work in my story world, but I need to understand that the technology exists.
Well, sometimes you
Absolutely.
do behind the scenes to make this plot point make sense, because I've seen that in some books sometimes. But they said that back on page 4 that they couldn't do that, but then they did that on page 500, and I'm like,
Ugh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Especially like science fiction readers, especially, I
oh yeah,
feel, I think in fantasy, there's a certain degree where we can go because magic and it's fine.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like, how do strands come out of anybody's hands in the
Mhm.
Weaver trilogy? I don't know. It just happens, guys, because the magic, that's the way it works. But science fiction readers are really intense with that, and you have to
Mhm.
get it right. Or
You
they're
do.
gonna come for
Mhm.
you, man.
Oh yeah.
Those science.
Yeah, like I know with my book
la la la
Echoes
la
in the
la. Don't know
Void,
who you're talking about.
since it takes place about 100 years in our future, I don't know how many times I spent or how many hours I spent looking at, okay, what is going to be the relative position of Jupiter to Mars, in 100 years in the future, because I didn't want, them to be on opposite sides of the sun where it'd be like impossible for them to get, from one point to the next in like a day or two.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to think about that stuff, man, because you're going to have that reader out there
Mhm.
who's going to think about it for you if you didn't take the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Absolutely.
it's so important.
Yeah.
Research, research, research.
Yeah, yeah. It's like over the course of for whatever reason, luckily I chose times of the year, times of the particular years that I was choosing. I They were in close proximity to each other. I'm like, okay, that's good enough.
That
Perfect.
works.
Close enough.
So before we wrap up, we do have a listener question um,
We have a listener
through
question.
Ooh.
through Twitch
I had
from
forgotten.
Princess in Christ. How do you deal with writer's block, or have you ever struggled to find cohesiveness in a story?
Yes and yes. Okay, so writer's block. Let's talk about that first. So I think that it is important. Sometimes you're just kind of having a hard time focusing or, a little stuck and you need to forgive the term, but go outside and touch grass, like I'll
Mm.
need to go take a walk or
Oh,
a hike
absolutely.
or something. Right. And sometimes it's just as simple as that and sort of getting out of your environment, letting your brain sort of recenter so that you can focus a little better. But sometimes the writer's block is sourced elsewhere. So when I'm dealing with writer's block, I have to ask myself, why am I struggling? Why am I struggling uh, to move forward? And sometimes it's that I don't know. I'm really an outliner. And the reason for that is because my brain is very chaotic, you may have noticed. And, I need to,
No.
nah, come on. Uh, and so if I just sit down and try to discovery write something or just draft, it's going to come out as something that is going to have to be massively edited. And I really don't like doing super heavy revisions. It works a lot better for me as a writer to have a roadmap of where my story is going and to let the story flow. Knowing where I'm going just works so much better for my brain. And that's not true for everybody. Discovery writing is a super valid process. So don't hear me say that outlining is the only way to do it. It's just really how I usually need to do it. So um, sometimes the reason that I'm stuck is because I don't have a good enough idea of where my story is going. I don't quite understand the purpose of a scene. And I need to step back from the actual drafting and think about that and ask myself those questions. What is the purpose of the scene? Where are we headed overall with the story? And sometimes that's enough to get me unstuck. Sometimes I'm just really stressed and I need to take a moment and go do something else, relax a little bit, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it's going to be painting my nails, or if it's summertime, I'll go out in my garden and I will weed. Even
Oh,
just
yeah.
going out there weeding my garden beds will help me sort of decompress, and I might be able to sit down and write after that. So I think it's important to find the source of where your block is coming from. And being able to do that happens from just years of experience with writing and being able to kind of discern where the block is happening. What was the second half of the question? I have now forgotten.
Have you ever struggled to find cohesiveness in a story?
Yes. So that's another reason I really like to outline, is because that helps me see the whole story from a 30,000-foot view, where I can spread out my beat sheet. My outlines are on the more intense side usually, where, I've got my major plot points and then I have every single scene in between. And that's
Oh,
not to
wow.
say that when I'm actually, yeah, they're intense. And that's not to say that when I'm drafting, I don't add things. I always do. I never stick 100% to my outline, but it's usually quite detailed. And that's because when I can step up above and get the big overview of the story, that helps me see those places where the cohesion is lacking, and I need to kind of I need to rethink parts or figure out how to smooth a bit or add more connective tissue, as I say, because we've got our major plot points that are like, the big structural moments, and then there's all the connective tissue in between. Um, so that's another reason that I really like to do that. It's ironic because the book that I'm drafting right now is the sequel to The Unraveling of Lindsay. And my outlining process would not work with this one. I could not get an outline on the page with this. And
Oh,
we're like
wow.
running up to I mean, and I've done this so many times, you guys. What's going on here? Like, why is this not working? And I've got 4 points of view in this story. And only one of them would come to me. And it's like the backstory that happened 17 years in the past. That was the only one that would come to me kind of from start to finish. And I was just like, what is going on? I'm going to hit my deadline here and not meet it because I don't have an outline. So I had to just start writing with a bunch of notes. And so that was very disconcerting for me. I have no idea how cohesive this draft will be when I finally finish it. My deadline is end of February. So
Oh,
we'll
no.
see. Yeah, this one might need a little more self-editing than I'm used to, and that's okay. I had to get the words on the page, and it does feel like it's coming together, so we'll see. It's not my normal process, so I feel uncomfortable.
Lindsay, I think that every book, and I'm an outliner as well, I think every book kind of has its own needs where that comes from. And it's like some books I need to have that step by step outline, and other times it's like I kind of know my major stuff, but how I get there is the beauty of discovery, and that's kind of where the discovery part comes in. So it's probably right for this book.
Yes, I
I'll give
think
you that
you're
reassurance.
yes, thank you. That does make me feel better. I think you're 100% right. And that is what I had with this. I had the broad strokes of where we needed to go. And I think my brain
Yeah.
just could not make it go in that sort of bulleted beat sheet kind of
Mhm.
format. And Josh will probably confirm I broke a lot of things in book one, and this is a duology. So for book two,
Yeah.
he's nodding.
Mm-hmm.
Uh
For book two, I was like, I have to now fix all of this stuff. Oh no, what am I going to do? So it took a lot of like notes and all that. And I did have the idea of, okay, I know where we're going with this. So it really has been okay. I swear every time you think you have your process down to a science, that's where the creative part of your brain goes, no, we're going to do something different. And it's
Yep.
going to be completely not what you're used to. And good luck.
Yep.
So that's totally been my experience with
Whereas
book two.
whereas Aaron and I just go, here's a handful of spaghetti. Let's just toss it at the wall.
It's a little more organized like that. It's like, well, we want to get to this town over here. We want to hit this town and this town on the way. What roads are we going to take? Nah, we'll just hop in the car and head in that general direction. Enjoy the trip.
I'm in awe of that, honestly. One of my closest writing friends is massively a discovery writer, and she writes brilliant YA contemporary fiction. And we have been, critique partners and close friends for over 10 years at this point. And so watching her process versus mine is fascinating because we end up at the same spot where we both have a story that is structurally sound, everything makes sense, everything flows. At least that's the goal. And so, but her process of getting there is like she writes the book 4, 5, 6, 12 times, or however many times it takes her to figure out what the story is, to find the structure, to get all of the beats. And it's not that she spends more time than I do. We could probably both write a book in about the same amount of time, but I'm doing all of that work before I've ever written one word on the page, where I'm looking at the outline, figuring all of that out. And then when I sit down to draft, I can just, in 2 months or whatever. And whereas she's rewriting the book over and over, we might each take 4 to 6 months to write the book. The process looks so different. And
Oh yeah.
that's wild to me. Wild the way that our different writer brains work.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's what I'm always doing.
And
Yeah.
from the opposite perspective, I look at the heavy outline on your people. It's like you've written 20 pages of outline. It's like you could have just written dialogue and you'd have the book by now instead of writing all the outline and then having to go and rewrite the whole thing. And so yeah.
Okay. So I've got a story idea that I'm working on right now, and I'm working on just the world building. I've already got 35 pages of character notes.
Yeah.
I don't even have any of the story yet. I just have, these are my characters. This is the world that they live in. This is what they are, because it's going to be an urban fantasy.
See, that just sounds painful to me.
I actually take that back. I do have a story idea for like a reader magnet that came out of one of the characters, how they became a werewolf. So I'm actually looking forward to writing that. So.
Hey, I love it.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. The different writing processes. You're right, Lindsay. It's just amazing how things come together. Even though that there's the one person who's writes 1,000 words and then cuts 2/3 of it out, and there's their book. Versus, and I put this string here. And I think this color looks good right here, type thing.
Try co-writing a book when one is an outliner and one is a pantser.
Oh no, that sounds painful.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that was a fun experiment.
Oh my goodness.
And we'll get there in the podcast. We might actually have you co-host.
Ask you the questions.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Lindsay, we've kind of run over our normal time, but it's so good to have you on the show again. Where can our listeners go to find out more about you and your books?
So absolutely, my website is a good hub for that. It's got a ton of information on there about me. That's lindsayafranklin.com. If you want to interact with me and get to know me a little more personally, Instagram is the place to
Mhm.
do that, because that is where I hang out on social media most of the time. And I'm sure you guys can put in your show notes, but I'm at Linzya Franklin. So it's a
Mhm.
little weird because it's spelled differently, but if you search Lindsay Franklin, I will show up. I'm there.
Hmm.
Yep. Yep. I think I follow you on Instagram. So
Yay.
Yeah.
I think so. Linzy, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Linzya Franklin. Yep.
Okay.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yep. There you
Well,
are.
thank you so much for coming on the show and dealing with our particular brand of
Craziness.
craziness.
Hey, I feel right at home here, man. We were all in the same padded room together. It's perfect.
Um, and we'll have to have you on again. And hopefully it won't be 9 years this time.
Yeah.
That's right. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're glad to have had you. So, and it was very fun. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Of course.
So, real quick, just a couple of quick announcements. We're going to be doing kind of our first truly solo show in probably ages, probably since the first Star Wars movie the sequel movie came out. 2 weeks. So look for that on your podcast feed, on Twitch if you have questions for us. Twitch stream will be on February 8th, tentatively. Look on our Facebook page just in case that changes. And then, Josh, who are we having on February 22nd?
Definitely a person.
Yes, we are having Lauren Brandenburg.
Oh, hey.
So
Oh, she's fun.
Awesome.
I love her.
she is.
Yep.
We'll be talking about her latest books in the Gardener series. So
Okay. Well, look forward to those shows coming up. And do we have anything personal that we need to announce?
Buy my books.
That's always good. So go buy, Aaron's and my books and Lindsay's books. It would make an author happy.
yep,
If you don't
Um,
buy them, if you've read them already, leave a review. That's free.
yeah.
yeah.
Reviews are great.
Yep. Exactly.
So
Um, be sure to follow us on Facebook. Share the podcast with your friends. We are on Twitter, or I guess it's X now. So look for us there. We're going to start posting a little bit more on all of our social media. So just be sure to check us out wherever you see us around on the interwebs. Otherwise, we will catch everybody next time. Have a great day.
yep. Have a good day.
See ya.